But our next guest has been a major influence on the crypto industry. This month, he took the position of CEO at Binance US after a short but impactful tenure at the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Joining us now is Brian Brooks. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Christine. Thanks for having me.
So, we just brought up central bank digital currencies. How do you were involved with the OCC. How have those discussions evolved in your view?
Well, I think in the U.S., they're more of a discussion than a reality, to be quite honest. I gave a talk yesterday. There was a poll asked of all the participants as to when they thought the U.S. would launch a CBDC. Did they think it was going to be A, in 2022, B, 2023 to 25, C, never? Only 5% of the people said never, but I'm going to put my money on never as the actual time. That's just not what we do in this country, is have the government build innovative structures. So even though there's a whole discussion about the idea that people ought to have individual accounts at the Fed and CBDCs are the way to do that, at the end of the day, if you look at the explosion of dollar-backed stablecoins, even just over the last couple of weeks, it shows me that in America, people still want innovative, bespoke products. They want the kind of cool customer experience that you get when technology is unleashed and offers you many options. The idea of funneling everybody into the Fed, for a CBDC feels a lot to me like asking people to go back to the post office. I just don't think that's the American way. It's clearly the Chinese way, but I don't think we're going to see that in this country, is my prediction. A lot of talk, less action.
So, Brian, welcome back. Speaking of that innovation, the guy who now has your old job at this OCC, Michael Hsu, said he's going to be reviewing some of the approvals he made for crypto companies. Senator Brown from Ohio singled out the approval for Paxos, Protego, and Anchorage. What do you think is motivating them? Is it because you were appointed by President Trump? Is it personal? Is it something you expect? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, I sleep well at night, so I don't take any of this stuff personally. I think there are a couple things going on. Okay, so one is we have gotten to a place in this country whenever one party is elected, the first thing they do is try and undo every single thing the other side said. So my line is, if I had cured malaria, they would have tried to put it back in place, because there's just that level of partisanship, and I think on the Hill in particular, that's what you're seeing. But the truth of the matter is, I think that my successor is a very smart guy, a relatively down-the-middle guy. And what he said in his testimony was, look, a lot of these changes are here to stay. They can't be stopped. And he just wants to get his handle on what's important and what's risky from his party's view of the world. And so I think it remains to be seen where that goes. But I've had good dialogue with him thus far, and I'm optimistic that the most important things we did will stay in place. I think pushing this stuff out of the banking system would be a really strange thing to do, especially for Democrats, because pushing it out of the banking system reinforces the power of the incumbent banks over the individual people who benefit from decentralization. So it's hard to believe that's the outcome.
Brian, it's always great to have you on the show. Just to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, which is Elon Musk. He's obviously very controversial. Some people like his tweets, some people don't. People blame him for crashing Bitcoin's price. But just from a legal regulatory point of view, is there a chance that what he is doing tweeting and his tweets leading to dramatic rises and falls in Bitcoin or Dogecoin, and as we know that he has a deep investment in Bitcoin, is there any chance that he could actually be accused of doing something illegal or of market manipulation?
Well, who can say? I am sure that he's surrounded by great lawyers. There's always the question of whether he always listens to the great lawyers, but that would depend a lot on what he's doing after he tweets. If you tweet and push the price down and then you buy that dip that you created, that would be a big problem. Hard to believe he's doing that. I think just seeing his public personality, I think it's more like he's a guy having a fun time with his influence and seeing how the world reacts to what he does. But if he's making money from this, that would be a problem.
So I guess the other way to look at it is that, okay, so there's that, is he profiting from this, right? But, say there's at some point you have all these ordinary investors losing their life savings in Dogecoin, and, they blame Elon Musk, right? Isn't that going to attract unwanted attention from regulators?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, it certainly will, because I think everybody who's on the program right now agrees that what we're trying to build here is a fundamentally new technology paradigm for not just finance, but for a lot of human interaction here. And anytime you shine a spotlight on some of these fringe markets or some of these kind of novelty items, and it looks like people are losing their shirt, usually what happens is regulatory overreaction. So what we don't want is a panic over Dogecoin prices to kill Bitcoin or ETH or some of the really fundamental innovations that are going on here. So I really hope that doesn't happen. And especially when I saw the news of Elon and Saylor coming together, around this Bitcoin mining council, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, it shows they plan to be in the space for the long haul. So hopefully they'll agree with me that we need to build some community around this by focusing on the foundational technologies and not focusing attention on, fringe short-term price movements that are resulting in people, having pump and dump type of experiences.
Just really quickly, what would a potential regulatory overreaction look like? Like, what's sort of the worst case scenario here?
Well, I mean, I'm assuming we all read the Wall Street Journal editorial page today where, a respected thinker just flat out called for banning Bitcoin. I've said before, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, $2 trillion asset markets usually don't go away, but there's a drumbeat for that kind of thing. And what I do worry about is, there's a war of political ideologies out there where right now the ascendant ideology is capitalism is less good than government. And if government's going to try and either crowd out or prohibit or ring fence, crypto, that's a problem. It's a problem for the future freedom that we envision created by decentralization. So I think there are a lot of ways that could happen. I think at this point, we're too far down the pike for that. I always make my Uber analogy that at a certain point, too many people were using it for the local taxi cab commissions to stop it, even though they tried. But you never know. And this is a time of one-party rule, so there are not a lot of checks and balances if the government-dominated impulse succeeds.
Ryan, if it's found that Elon Musk has been pushing around prices of Bitcoin, or at least tweeting about it to cause a bit of a panic, so that miners, let's say, buy credits from him, buy solar panels or such things, putting your old regulatory hat on, do you think you would see, for instance, the FTC involved in regulating things like Bitcoin just because of its the ancillary effects of it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't see that leading to regulation of Bitcoin versus regulating the person who's doing all of those things. I mean, the CFTC, many people don't know, does actually have market manipulation authority over spot market manipulation. So they don't regulate cash spot markets per se, but if you're engaged in fraud or manipulation of cash spot markets, they have enforcement authority over those things. And so if it turned out the way that you're describing, if this is all a commercial enterprise on his part, and I'm not saying it is, it's hard to believe it is, but that, again, that would be an issue. I think the optimistic case here, though, everybody, is that he's now signaling he's in it for the long haul. And one of the things that caused the big crash last week was the belief that he was getting out. So if he's going to be in it for the long haul, if Tom Brady's going to be in it, right, we're talking about people who are themselves institutions at some level. And, in that sense, I kind of welcome their involvement. Better to have more people on chain with us debating within the community than to have people criticizing outside.